Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Derry Girls, Season 3, Episode 2. In this episode, the girls decide that they are going to participate in a talent show, and they really go for it, and I am so proud of them. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Ashleigh for commissioning this episode. Ashleigh wasn't able to be here live, but she came early and left some comments in the chat, which I really appreciate. And there is something that I was wondering about that I'm really grateful she mentioned in her comments because I read them ahead of time. I'm going to mention this off the top because this is something that I was watching, kind of going, I'm going to trust this is a thing and I just don't know about it, but that it would be something that if you went to a school, maybe in Britain, maybe Catholic specifically, you would get. So Ashley says, I'm realizing I don't think I've ever seen American schools do those fasts or anything, but they are really common here. In my last year of school, I fasted, didn't speak, and didn't sit down for 24 hours. I just stood in the back of the class. It's not necessarily required by the school, and maybe it's not a thing in non-Catholic school, but in our school, you'd be looked down on if you didn't at least fast for the day. This is so wild to me. Now, I'm going to go ahead and say it probably is a Catholic school thing, but I'm just guessing, because that is it feels like the depriving yourself of something is so very specifically a Catholic thing. However, I may be totally wrong about that. That said, when I stop and think about it, the fact that it isn't standard in schools in the U.S. to do any sort of real fundraising for charities makes a lot of sense because our schools are too busy fundraising for their own shit because we don't fund our schools. So there was a moment of me going yeah, why don't we do charity fundraisers that often? And it's because we can't afford our art department anymore. We can't afford our yearbook editing or a prom or our marching band and the travel that's required for different, all of those things. We do chocolate bar sales and popcorn sales, anything like that, to fundraise for different departments and projects at the school that I think at schools in Europe, it would just be something that was paid for because Europe seems to value education a lot more than we do in the United States. So, yeah, I guess it makes sense, but it is deeply depressing. There's just, I don't know, Ashleigh, if you're familiar with Abbott Elementary, but if you haven't watched it, it's on Hulu and it's excellent. And it's a really good look at the average school in the United States experience. It is perhaps less funding than some, but I feel like in general, it's a pretty good snapshot of the state of our budgeting, So, yeah, it's very, very excellent, though. So highly recommend Abbott Elementary. Anyway, I just appreciate Ashleigh has left a lot of stuff here that was very helpful. And she specifically mentions my, quote, favorite song being in this episode, which we shall get to. And she said she is feeling under the weather. I hope you're feeling better. So there's also a mention, and this I'll mention now because it is at the very start, cold open. Mary having been able to buy Pop-Tarts, Ashleigh is just like, I'd like to know where she was doing her shopping, because it's only in the last 5 or 6 years that I've seen them on the shelves here. Before that, you would have had to go up to the American Sweet Store in Dublin and hand over half your life savings. Last time I went in there, if I recall, I paid 12 euros for a packet of those little chocolates in the silver foil. The Kisses is what she says, the Hershey Kisses, which I would just like to say, for the record, as an American, there are no candies of ours that anybody should be paying for abroad except Reese's Peanut Butter Cups. That's really, in my opinion, the only candy that we've got going on that is like particularly excellent in a way that I have never been able to find replicated in any other candy. So many different brands make their own cups, like peanut butter cups, and they are just not as good. Reese's has figured it out. It's a magical formula that they got by making a deal with the devil, I have no doubt. Otherwise, our chocolates are trash. Very bad. I mean, even our version of Cadbury is worse than the British Cadbury, which is just really unfair. But our version of Cadbury is certainly at least better than like our Hershey's chocolate. Hershey chocolate, to me, is chocolate flavored wax. It's just nothing. It's chalky and strange. And perhaps some of our like fruit-based candies might be something that I would see as like worth it. I don't know what y'all have in the realm of a Skittles or a Sour Patch Kid, which are my particular favorite. But those are really, really good. But anything chocolate-based, like, it's just, we don't have the standards, man, that a lot of other countries do for chocolate. So unless you really get something high-end, and we pretend certain things are high end that like really are not. So you can't tell based on the pricing or packaging. You've got to kind of know your stuff and know how to like suss it out. And that's not always easy to figure out. Anyway, very distracted on this. Forgive me. But I'm thinking about you paying 12 euros for Hershey Kisses. And I apologize in advance, Ashleigh, because I cannot imagine that was satisfying. I have to think that you were disappointed with those, because I have paid $1 for Hershey Kisses and been disappointed. Anyway, so the start of this episode, honestly, look, I'm going to talk about something here, and I am not trying to throw Owen under the bus. What I'm going to talk about is generally the sense of what Mary is going through here. And I want to preface this by saying it is not at all the same. Not really. Because Mary has a full family to look after. And so that experience is just so much bigger and more overwhelming. And it's not even her own family. Like, she's got her sister and her daughter here as well. So it's just a lot. But Mary's, this is so, I can't tell if this is spectacularly edited or if all the actors really did know their lines this like pat, or if it was a combo of the two. But the whole way this scene goes down is flawless. So we start off with Mary trying to wash some dishes while Sarah is explaining to her about a voucher program to get free makeup with these things that she's found, and the fact that you can only get one per person. So she wants to like do a whole thing with getting costumes. I was just like, you have a set of girls over here with a bunch, like, send them in and give them one thing each and then take the rest and have that be the deal. But Sarah is never going to be very quick to come up with a good plan, let's be honest. So she's in the midst of this while Mary is realizing that the hot water is out, which has apparently been a problem. So she's calling for Jerry while Sarah is trying to like explain to her the voucher thing, which really doesn't need explaining because it is very simple. And then when Jerry finally comes in, he is very quickly followed by Erin, who wants to know where her fountain pen is. And she's extremely demanding with her mother, as if her mom took it and put it somewhere and not as if she herself probably lost it, which is likely what happened. And then behind all of this comes Orla, who likes the chocolate Pop-Tarts, but not the blueberry ones. And she literally is like crying as she says she only eats them out of pity. And all of this dialogue is layered on top of and in between each other, as Mary is attempting to deal with each individual thing. And she's doing it in such a way that they're getting exactly the amount of tension they deserve, but not what they think they deserve. And everybody wants her to figure everything out. And then she snaps. And it is absolutely gorgeous, to be honest. She says she's sick of it and basically screw all of your bullshit. And then she calls them useless shites. I thought she was going to apologize, and she doesn't. She calls them useless shites, and then she tells them she's going to go off and have a hot bath, and she doesn't want anyone to disturb her until her husband, unfortunately, reminds her that they do not have any hot water, which I really felt in my soul. Now, again, I want to say that this is not something that is like proportional for me, but I get to feeling this way sometimes, that everything is sort of on my shoulders to keep track of. And it is so exhausting. And I don't even have kids. You know, really the times that it has been the toughest were planning the wedding, because I was also managing a lot of people. And they were people that it felt like should be capable of like figuring some things out, but they often didn't and would come to me. And then the recent thing has been dealing with the puppies. And it is not to say that Owen didn't do what needed doing, but I had to tell him. I couldn't like depend often on him thinking to do it himself. I had to be the brains of the operation, and he would do what he was told, but I had to do the figuring out. I had to do the research. I had to do the legwork. I had to do the buying of the supplies. He did whatever needed doing with the supplies, but everything surrounding getting things like set and organized all fell to me. And then on top of it, I was expected to figure out food in the house and cleaning and whatever. And this is just an experience that I'll say most, but it's like, when I say most, I don't mean like 70%. I mean like 95% of women are familiar with. We are expected to manage everything domestic, and domestic is 80% of our overall lives. And when I say our, I mean human beings. But that work is not respected. We absolutely rely on it, but we don't give it any respect. So it's this awful fucking position where if we don't do something and manage it the way it needs to be, our entire household can fall apart. No hot water, like that's a real issue. But if you do have hot water and nobody has known that you went and found a plumber or fixed the boiler yourself or whatever, it's just taken for granted. Oh, we have hot water because we have it. And nobody thinks about how that works. Similarly, the folding of laundry. Like, if you are the kind of parent who folds the laundry for your family and puts it away, those people begin to believe their clothing just shows up in their drawers folded. And they don't think about the work that you put in to getting their clothing where it needs to be for them to find it. They just take for granted that the garbage gets emptied. They just take for granted that the bathroom is clean enough to use, that the toilet works. All of this stuff that is actually requires a great deal of work to maintain, to the point of it being functional, having clean dishes, whatever. It's all just a sheer expectation that it will be usable and correct when they go to use whatever it is. So you don't get credit at all. It's invisible. And it's so discouraging. It's so discouraging. I, again, don't even have children. And I simply cannot imagine what it is like to be managing more than just myself and Owen. Literally kill me. This is why I don't want to be a parent. It's just so much. And if you have I work from home, and due to that, being home all day, whether it's purposeful or not, there is an expectation that I'm going to kind of do more than my fair share because I'm here. And it's not fair, but it is what it is. And it's led to some really uncomfortable conversations, because there have been times where it's felt like Owen really genuinely did not know what I did all day. And I had to sit and map out for him the amount of basic tidying, just putting certain things back away, cleaning this up, sorting the mail, taking the recycling out, little things that he just doesn't notice. And it's because they're always done, and if they're not, then it becomes an issue. So her explosion here, it just felt really good to watch. I was really proud of her, especially later on when she decides that she's not going to deal with some of the household stuff, and she's going to sit here and read this book. It was an Emily Bronte book, but I can't remember what book it is. It's not, I don't remember. But regardless, she's taking time for herself in a way that a lot of people would have this kind of blow up, and then they would backpedal and apologize and feel sort of guilty. And I was just so pleased that she doesn't do that. Instead, what this revelation sort of centers around is her not believing that she will be able to go back to school, and not about her coping with the guilt of drawing boundaries for herself, really, is what it is. I was going to say refusing to do certain things, and that makes it sound a lot more antagonistic than it should. Drawing boundaries, that's the way to say this. But there is a downside to doing this, and we see that with the way Sarah decides to cook dinner. Because she is serving them raw chicken at the end of this. And this is the thing. People always talk about well, you just have to let other people do stuff. That sounds like a simple thing, but you would be absolutely shocked at how simple a thing can be and still be done wrong. And I don't make a secret of the fact that I can have pretty high standards for things. So I recognize sometimes that I can be a little bit too rigid in what I want. But even when I try to completely let go of that, even the basics aren't covered. And this is a great example. It's not even cooked all the way. It's literally a danger to eat. And this is just a perfect snapshot again of just what it looks like to delegate a lot of the time. When you delegate, you can't just go ahead and say, do the thing. It takes extra labor from you to teach a person how to do something before you can step back and let them do it. So a lot of times women don't delegate because they don't want to put in the additional labor on top of what they already do to teach a person, when it's just sort of easier in the short term to keep doing it themselves. And it's not a smart approach, but it's a really understandable approach when somebody is already feeling like they're drowning. So anyway, I just was like super into this whole thing for Mary and very excited for her. And I am so glad that like we never see Jerry argue with her about what she does in the house. He never argues with her that she's overreacting, or he's just not accusatory at all. He's just sort of like trying to figure out how to cope, because she's obviously still really angry when he goes and talks to her and she's in the midst of reading this novel and she's complaining about how she never has the free time to do it. And when she's like talking about how going back to school is just a dream and it will never happen for her, he immediately is like, you absolutely should. And maybe some of that is born of his relief that she isn't having an affair like it looked like. But I like to think that Jerry is just not entirely conscious of what she does, but when she begins to point it out, recognizes the truth of it and doesn't try to belittle her, you know? So anyway, I kind of have summarized a lot of what went on with her storyline, but we've skipped over a significant bit, which we shall get to in a moment. So she has this blow up, and then we have the opening titles, and we go to the girls at school, and they're having an assembly. And it's always weird to me when I watch the assemblies in this show, because they're standing in the gym. And usually in my school, we had an actual assembly room that was like a theater. And all of this stuff would have been taking place in there, and we would be seated very much like in sex education. You know, they have that same room. So they're there and they're wondering where James is. And I love this because James shows up and he has taken his driver's exam and passed, and none of them even knew he was going to take it. And he's like, I've been talking about this nonstop for like 2 weeks, and you guys saw me getting picked up by my driving teacher. And Michelle says, oh, I just thought that was some kind of creep. And he says, and you didn't intervene? And she says, you seemed happy enough. Honestly, I'm really not that mad at her for that. You know, like, you seemed happy enough. I mean, all right, you know, fair. So anyway, we see our first thing with Clara not speaking, or just Claire, right? Claire not speaking. And then we have those like two nerd girls whose names I have forgotten. I think one of them is named Penelope. Am I wrong about this? But they are dancing and it's like they're walking and they're only sort of dancing with their arms, but they are really, really goofy. And apparently this is their thing, is doing this for 24 hours and they haven't slept. And when Erin is like, how are they so bouncy and energized? Michelle says they're off their tips on lemon sherbet. So when they ask Claire, how is it going? She does the sort of like side to side hand thing. And Orla says it would be better off if you didn't breathe. And what I thought was that Orla was making a joke at the fact that Claire literally cannot shut up to save her life, and that asking her not to talk is the same as asking her not to breathe. But it turns out that Orla is under the impression that she herself has given up breathing. And I mean, honestly, I love when Erin says, oh, so you're currently not breathing. And if you have the subtitles on, it says correct. And then in brackets, breathes out. I love a salty subtitle. I love it. It's my favorite. So Erin is saying that she is planning to visit the hospital and she's going to read the sick kids some of her work, which apparently that's what her like fountain pen was for. It was for her to write her novel, which I'm I have to imagine is really terrible. And Michelle says, for my thing, I might cut my hair. Charlene Kavanaugh made a shit ton when she did it last year, and I'm trying to save for a holiday. And Erin's like, you can't keep the money, Michelle. You have to give it to a charity. And she says, what? Do you not just give them the hair? And I guess she's thinking of like Locks for Love. But this has always been something that I found really, really kind of puzzling about the way that these things work, because even though I didn't do these things in school, I know that, you know, something like No Shave November, for example, that is allegedly to bring attention to prostate cancer, I think. And the whole thing is supposed to be that you don't shave, but you also collect donations for this thing. And you're not shaving to raise awareness of the issue, but people are just, and I've always just been kind of like, look, you could also just ask for donations just at all, right? Like, my question is, do people actually get more donations if they say, I'm not speaking for 24 hours? Like, I have to assume it works or we wouldn't be doing it, right? Like, it's been long enough with this being a thing that for example, the Ice Bucket Challenge, that apparently raised a ton of money for, like, I think it was ALS research, if I'm not mistaken on that. And I would never have thought this would be such that is slightly different though, because that's like online, and it is, you can post this Ice Bucket Challenge video with a link in the video that will go viral to raise this money. And so it's more capitalizing on the virality of social media. This is like an in-person thing. I imagine that's the way I understand it. So if you just tell people that you are meeting in person, I'm raising money for kids in need, and I'm not sitting down for 24 hours, it's kind of weird to me that second part would matter. If you're raising money for kids in need, that should really be it. Adding, I'm not going to sit down for 24 hours, which, by the way, Ashleigh, that's bonkers. I can't even imagine not sitting down for 24 hours. Like, kill me. But also, you were probably quite young, and I suppose when I was young, I could have managed, but I would really rather not. But why does that make people want to give more money? Like, what does that have to do with anything? It's just strange. Am I wrong? Like, that's a weird thing. And again, I'm not saying it doesn't work. I'm saying the fact that apparently it does work is kind of fucked up. So anyway, just wanted to mention this because, like, that's a big part of this episode, obviously. So this is when James comes in and saying that he passed his driving test. He's so excited. And then we have the actual presentation with these, like, nerdy girls, and they're going up there and they're dancing on the stage, and the music that's playing is this sort of like Roomba music or I don't even know. And it is just incredibly embarrassing. This, like, kids in need bear, who I guess is their mascot with the little, like, bandage over one eye, drags one of the teachers up to dance along with them, much against her will, and it is the most awkward thing in the whole world. So Sister Michael puts a stop to it pretty quickly, and these two fade to the background. And then she says there's another serious and rather depressing side to children in need, which I thought was going to be just that there are children in need. But instead, it is that Father Peter has decided to come and talk about it. And he gets up and y'all, this dude, if I am not mistaken, he's Father Matthew? Doesn't he correct somebody who calls him Peter later on in the episode? Or is that part of, like, a bit he's doing? I don't remember if there's like, because they're obviously imitating a show, which Ashleigh does mention. It's, let's see, Stars in Their Eyes was a real show. Throwing in a Z is forever the way to get around copyright. And so I don't know if maybe he's saying that his name is Matthew because that's like the actual host of the show, like demanding to be called Alex if you're pretending to host Jeopardy. But anyway, she calls him Father Peter. This guy has a ponytail. And this was something that I couldn't help laughing at because this show does this thing with the concept of attractive men. And we had all of the girls falling all over themselves for that priest, like last season, I think it was season 2, who was like fine looking. I didn't think he was unattractive, but I think this priest is just as attractive, and he is played as revolting. A lot of it being based off of his ponytail, but also like in general, his like personality. And then later when we meet the plumber, he is treated like an Adonis, and he just looks very ordinary to me also. And that's, again, not to say that he isn't attractive in a basic way, but I feel like I don't really have a good grasp on what people who are into men in this universe find attractive, because it's all over the place to me. And there are ones that I just don't think I would ever look twice at that are really fawned over. And I just have to assume that this is just part of the script, and maybe that's part of the joke as well. But he is saying, what we are going to do is have everybody perform. And I love when he's like, I don't know whose idea it was, but it was genius. And Sister Michael, it was your idea. You said, can we have a Stars in Their Eyes night? And I said, absolutely not. And then you started begging. At one point, it looked like you were going to cry. I think you've maybe slightly misremembered there. But the prize is the winner will get a chance to, he asked for a drum roll, which she's like, you should know better than that, perform their song live on TV. And Michelle is absolutely all about it. She had 1 second ago been saying that there was absolutely no fucking way she was participating. But then when she hears that, she's just on board immediately. So this is when the doorbell rings. We go over to their house, and it's Wuthering Heights that she's reading. That's right. And the plumber comes in. And again, all of these ladies, even the gents, are kind of like, well, damn. And again, he's fine looking. Like, he's not fine. He's fine. It's fine. But evidently, there's a guy named Frankie that they used to get, and he passed away. So this dude has taken his place. And I really enjoy Mary introducing herself. And she's just like, when he says his name, she says, me too. And then has to remember her name and then cannot remember her husband's name. And I love him being like, Jerry. The first time I got married, my mother she saw my father at the wedding. And it was the first time they had seen each other in like 5 years, maybe longer. And when she was introducing her new husband, she called him by my father's name. Just truly so embarrassing. So the whole bit about like forgetting your spouse's name, not as outlandish as you might think it is. But yeah, and I love Joe coming in saying, Christ, but you're a fine-looking specimen. And I love this moment when he notices her reading Wuthering Heights. And he's like, it's my favorite novel. It's so romantic. Like the forbidden desire, wanting something so badly that you can't have. Not being allowed just makes you want it more, I suppose. And I love Mary just going, yep. So she brings him cups of tea throughout the day, despite him definitely not needing that many cups of tea. And he sticks around a little bit later on in order to have more tea, which understandably Jerry is kind of like, why don't you move along, sir? It's just fine. And eventually we have this moment where Claire sees him in the like foyer as he's leaving, and he's telling her, when you change your mind, here's my number. And he leaves an address, we find out later. And when she says, I'm really flattered, he says something like, I always get what I want. And it's totally understandable why Claire takes it the way that she does. And it really doesn't make a lot of sense to think about him saying it the way he does, unless maybe he was trying to be flirty, which could be it. I don't know. But overall, I have to say, while I think any of the girls would have reported back, I really like the fact that Claire breaks her 24-hour silence in order to tell them all what's going on, because Claire absolutely could never stand to not tell them this. Like, she's just in everybody's business all the time. And this is a gold mine, you know, absolutely on it. So we have the bit where the girls are about to start rehearsing their dance, which we don't know what it is they're planning to perform here. Right before they go upstairs, I do enjoy this. There is the conversation with Gabriel at the table about his raising his daughter by himself and it being a privilege, which of course, all of this just makes him even more dreamy. And when the girls get home, they are all very impressed with him. And fucking Erin comes up to him and tries to do the like, well, hello there. And he treats her like an infant. And what age are you? And he taps her on the nose. I genuinely could not get enough of that. Because one, it's just such a, like, and Ashleigh, it's interesting, in the chat says, I'm convinced the Kildare plumber's daughter is coded as neurodivergent. Could be way off, but just looking at her behavior during the argument, which really is the only scene we see her, I really think so. And I'll be honest, Ashleigh, I didn't even notice her during the argument. So when I go through this as I'm watching it in the background now, I'm going to pay attention. But Ashleigh goes on, it also might go some way toward explaining his behavior with Erin earlier. Maybe that's an acceptable way to speak with his 12-year-old daughter, so that's his only frame of reference for speaking to young girls, or maybe he's just strange. Although regardless, I do think she might be neurodivergent. And I like that idea that maybe like this is how he interacts with his daughter, so he doesn't know any better. And I also especially like it because him treating Erin this way immediately undercuts any potential of him being a creep. And that's really very important to me. You know, it is just the number of creeps in the world. The number of men of the age Gabriel is in this scene, I'm going to put him at like maybe 30, who would respond favorably to a 17-year-old girl flirting is like 85%. It's quite high, and I know from experience. So I just really enjoy him responding to her like she's an actual infant, because it just makes it so not on his radar that he would ever look at her that way at all. And I like it. I frankly like it. It's inappropriate in the other direction, but I would really rather that. So anyway, we have all of the girls getting ready to rehearse their thing. And I love it. It's all this like sunlight pouring through the window, and they are fucking ready and on it. And then we smash cut, and it is dark outside, and they are they are very sore and tired and bored, and Michelle is ready to lose it on all of them. It's 2 steps forward, 2 steps back. It couldn't be any fucking simpler. And honestly, considering what we see later on, this like attitude that Michelle has is working quite well. Like, she apparently managed to whip them into shape, and I say good for her. So anyway, this is when Claire goes out there and she hears that thing, comes back inside, tells them all about this. And Erin is just like not believing it pretty much, because most people do not see their parents as being capable of like having an affair, because we just don't see them as being potentially attractive to anyone. And that's clearly Erin's POV on this. It's sort of, just, you know, as somebody whose parent had an affair for many years, and I was aware of it for many years, I just have a really like skewed perspective on this, because I have always been extremely aware that there was the potential for this and the capability for this. And there were even situations in which there wasn't an affair happening, but I could feel the energy between them and another person, and knew that even if it weren't happening, which I could tell it wasn't, that it was on their minds. And it was just, I never had a period in my life where I didn't see my parents as being A, sexual, B, potentially disloyal, and C, attractive to others. That's just always been part of how I understood their experience of the world. So I know that like for a lot of people, the idea that their parent was having an affair, it's a combination of being shocked that they could find somebody to have an affair with, and also that they would betray their other parent in this way, and they take it really personally. And I didn't take it personally. I was actually understood it, because the relationship that my parents had was really toxic and unstable. So it made sense. And I didn't approve of it. I was angry about it because of the fact that it went on for so long. And there was never a confrontation about it until like I was in college. But it's always interesting to me to see how often this sort of thing results in kids who are shaken to their core in their perception of who their parents are, where it was sort of part of my consciousness from when I was like at least 6 years old. So I just, that part of it was so not a factor for me. And I just really, I can understand it in like a hypothetical way, but it is not at all my experience. So when I watch scenes like this, I always feel like kind of an alien, because I'm like, it has that sense for me of like, God, am I really that fucked up that the universal reaction to this news is so contrary to my experience of it, And I guess the answer is probably yes, I am that fucked up. But what can you do? And it's not necessarily like an inherently bad thing, but it certainly warps your trust in your parents as like the people who know everything and who are to be seen as infallible up to a certain age. I stopped seeing them that way very early because this stuff was being done like right in front of my face. So yeah, it's just, I don't know, a weird experience. So anyway, this is when we have the like raw chicken dinner that Sarah is calling al dente, and Mary makes this really pathetic, weird excuse for why she's going out, and all the girls are assuming that it is about the affair. And everything Mary is saying about the woman she's going to go see, Sarah manages to come up with like a reason why it's not going, like that woman wouldn't do that. Did her mother not pass away? And oh, that's right, she did. So we're just going to have a couple drinks in her memory. But is Eileen not teetotal, Mary? My God, how do you know so much about Eileen Rafferty? What are you, a stalker? If a woman's 50 and there's not a line on her, I take an interest, Mary. I don't know why, but I fucking love that line. So, and throughout this, I have to say, Michelle is off to the side smirking like crazy, because I really get the sense Michelle doesn't give a fuck about like the ethics of the thing. She's just enjoying watching Mary squirm and trying to make excuses. Like, this is pure reality television for Michelle. And I completely get that. So anyway, she rushes out and the girls are trying to figure out what to do. And I keep saying the girls, y'all know that includes James. It's fine. And they find the paper that has the address that she's going to on it. And when they go there, they spot Mary through the window with him with a glass of wine, and they both grab the curtains and close them. There doesn't appear to be anybody else in the room. And later on, we find out that there were more people there, but it sure doesn't look like that in this moment. So then we go to the actual talent show, and everybody is wearing these like robes with hoods on them in the back. And I just want to ask Ashleigh, is this a thing? Because I have never seen this in my life. These robes are wild. And I don't know if it's supposed to protect your hair from getting mussed. I would think it would fuck your hair up, if anything. But they're like waffle weave, so they look otherwise just like sort of a regular, almost like a hotel robe. But then the hoods over them, it's just a really weird, like, they look cozy as fuck, I'll say that. But it was the fact that they're all wearing them, even other people in the background, makes it seem like this is just standard backstage. And as somebody who worked in theater, I have never seen this in my life. So I have to assume that this is like a regional thing specifically, but I don't know. Anyway, so the talent show, we have a couple of like, first one is my favorite song that Ashleigh was referring to. I really enjoy that this father, Peter, who is trying to build up a sense of suspense, keeps getting undercut because nobody here has any real sense of drama associated with this. And he's like wanting to make it a fun sort of show, and they are not prepped to do that and have no real inclination to do it. So they are not engaging with him at all. And it is absolutely agonizing to see. So the song that Ashleigh is referring to as my favorite was Meatloaf's I Will Do Anything for Love, in parentheses, but I won't do that, close parenthesis. And I absolutely detest this song with every fiber of my person, and I have ever since I was little. The first time I heard this song was on television in a commercial for one of those like CDs of greatest hits of whatever year, and it infuriated me that in the lyrics he says he would do anything and then immediately says but not that, because I was just like, well, then you won't do anything. Like, it's right there that you won't do anything. What are you talking about? And like, as a very literal child, I grew so frustrated with that concept. And then to find out that it was like a smash hit song just wrecked my brain. I was so angry about it. And I just have maintained that sense of it forever. And Ashleigh says in the chat, to be honest, I always think of this when you bring up that Meatloaf song. I have a similar gripe with One Direction's What Makes You Beautiful. In their eyes, the only thing that makes that girl beautiful is that she doesn't know. Putting aside how dickish that is, your solution is to tell her. Thereby, she would become ugly using One Direction logic. I really hate that song. I love that. I love that so much because Ashleigh, you know, that I don't know if that I've heard the song. I probably have, but I know it by its reputation and the dickishness of the concept that in order to be beautiful, you have to be also very insecure and unaware of yourself. So I've always just disliked it on that principle. But I really like the internal logic that you're pointing out of just, well, now you told her, so according to you, that means she can't be beautiful anymore. That just straight up never occurred to me, and that's fun. So yeah, she begins singing it, and they have like a pretty good fog machine and stuff going. It is great. I love Sister Michael at the door, and she is like taking the money for people to come to the show and trying to tell them that they don't have to stay for the show because by buying the ticket, they've already given to charity. So it's fine. And her utter perplexity at the fact that they want to stay for the show anyway. They genuinely want to watch it. She's just not getting it. So then we have this performance with the two nerds, and one of them is singing, and I don't know what this song actually is. So if anybody wants to inform me, but the line she's singing is "Stay with Me." And she is absolutely flawless. Like the line itself, the notes are like so heart-wrenching. Her delivery is unbelievable. And then her fucking partner comes up out of the coffin off key and out just like really bad and ruins the entire thing. And they are the ones, by the way, that wind up on television, I guess, despite everything, because these girls didn't finish their number, which is such a shame. And I totally get it. And I'm not mad at Erin, but honestly, it's so saddening. So they come out and they are, oh, you know what? Ms. T in the chat says, I thought they were keeping the costume secret regarding their robes. And I forgot that they come out on stage in the robes. So I guess that's what it is that these robes are specific to be able to keep it secret what you're going to be performing. And I think because I'm not familiar with the show itself, Stars in Their Eyes, I didn't fully appreciate how big a part of this show, it being secret, what your number was going to be, would be. And I just completely forgot about that part. So I think you're right, but it is just weird looking too. But anyway, they are doing the Spice Girls. I don't remember the name of the song, but I love this so much. I love Orla being like, well, they're English, but we like them anyway. And they take off their robes. Of course, Michelle is Scary Spice. Claire is Baby Spice, which is just absolutely correct. Matthew is James. Sorry, I keep saying Matthew because I'm like reading the subtitles. James is Posh Spice, which I was kind of surprised because I thought Erin would be Posh Spice, but Erin is Ginger Spice and she's got like a wig on, I think, right? And then we have Orla as Sporty Spice. And it makes sense because the only other way that I would see this going was maybe James being Sporty Spice. And then you've got Posh for Erin and Ginger for Orla, which I don't feel like really works. I think this is the best setup. And they come out and everybody is obviously really uncertain in the audience about this to begin with. But then they start to fucking kill it. They are really good. Like, considering everything, they are on it. And I am like genuinely impressed more than once at the way they're handling this whole thing. And their parents are clearly like very surprised at the fact that they're doing this well. And you see like Sister Michael off to the side with her eyebrows up, like she's clearly impressed as well. The whole thing is just such a pleasant surprise, which is what makes it so terrible when Erin is looking out into the audience for her parents and she sees that fucking Gabriel showed up to the talent show. And he came with his daughter. But I have to say, even though he says he brought her, I have looked just now, and I looked for her in the first viewing, and I didn't see her. She's so not the focus in that moment. So I'm taking it for granted that she's there, especially because Ashleigh mentions her later on. But I just really expected her to feature. There she is. Okay, so we see her clapping. There's a moment here. And he's like leaning over and whispering with her mother. The whole thing does look really bad. And poor Erin sort of loses it, runs off stage. Her mother sees her run off and thinks something's wrong, which it is, and follows her back there. And Erin just confronts her in front of everybody about her having an affair. And I love this so much. She starts yelling at Gabriel and she says, "Admit it, Gabriel, you're just a pervert with a jazzy jumpered ma fetish." And Gabriel says, "I'd rather not admit that if you don't mind." I love that he doesn't say that's not true. He just says, "I'd rather not admit that." I don't know why, but that's like the best part of this entire scene is him just being like, I'll keep that part to myself, thanks. Oh, God. So then she's like, getting onto her ma, "I saw you go to his house," and blah, blah, blah. And poor Jerry, who is like only working with what his daughter is saying, assumes, as you would, because she says, "I saw you at his house, I followed you," that this is all true. And he goes after Gabriel in such a way that they're not actually like fighting so much as sort of just shoving each other. And Joe steps in and says, "If one of you doesn't hit the other soon, I'm going to knock the pair of you out." And I just love that. It's like not the fighting that's the problem. It's that they're fighting like really badly, inefficiently. It's not a real fight. And that's what's like offending him, which that makes total sense to me. That's fair. So finally, Mary is trying to explain. And of course, as she's explaining, it still sounds very much like an affair. And then she says he's taking a class on English literature. He wants to do a degree. The house was his tutor's house. There were 8 other people there. I was drinking wine because everybody was drinking wine. There was cheese as well. And finally, Jerry's like, "Well, then why wouldn't you just tell me that's what's going on?" I love Joe stepping forward. Why should she have to tell you? God bless Joe. Is he too much a lot of the time, especially regarding Jerry? Yes. Am I here for his fucking energy, though? Also 100% yes. He calls Jerry a control freak and says, "Is it any wonder you had an affair?" Just not helpful, Joe. I appreciate you, but what are you doing? I just calling Jerry a control freak too. Like, just, is there anyone who's less of a control freak? But anyway, she says, "I didn't want to say anything because the idea that someone like me could go back to school and might even go to university, it didn't seem possible. I thought there's no point in telling anybody about all this because it's not actually going to happen. It's not real." And this is when he says, "Well, let's make it real if that's what you want." And she looks genuinely startled. I love her in this scene. She looks so vulnerable. The moment where she says, "Do you really mean that?" She almost like can't make eye contact with him for a moment because it's like too much to hope that he means what he's saying. I felt her in this. I love this. And then he says, "There's nothing you can't do, love. Nothing." And her dad still calls him an absolute arsehole, even though he's fucking supporting her. And then Erin, "How could you, Mammy? I wanted to be the first person in our family to go to university. And now you're absolutely stealing my thunder." And the face she makes when she is saying this, the actress who plays Erin has as much of a rubber face as Jim Carrey easily, probably more. Her face isn't even a solid. it's just liquid behind a piece of like like plexiglass, and people just smush the plexiglass onto it and move it in different directions to get her to make the faces. It is wild the way her entire like nose just caves into the like how. But I love James in the background just saying, "Really, Erin?" So yeah, we get to see all of them at home with the actual winners on the TV, who suck, by the way. And Michelle yelling she hasn't got a fucking note in her head. And all of this ends with a speeding notice that they get in the mail. And I forgot to talk about this, but Matthew is talking about like road safety when he drives them to where they think Gabriel and Mary are having an affair. But he's going like way too slowly. And he thinks he's being safe, but it's like the opposite. So then when Mary gets this traffic notice and she sees the date, she says, "I thought you were in on Tuesday night." And he says, "I was watching Taggart." And then, "Are you having an affair? Is that what's going on here?" And all of the kids just get up and clear out of the room. It was good stuff. So yeah, that is the end of the episode, but this is a really, really fun one. I really liked it a lot, and I'm just like excited for Mary. I really am interested to see how the household goes with her deciding to go back to school, because if I'm not mistaken, she doesn't work another job, right? She does the domestic stuff, but she doesn't work like a paying job. So she's been taking care of absolutely everything. And now she's going to be dividing up her time, and we'll have to see how everybody like manages without her managing it. So that'll be fun. All right, I have to wrap, but thank you guys again so much for hanging out with me, and thank you to Ashleigh for commissioning this. Been super fun. Also appreciate your comments in here, Ashleigh, before I even started. Good looking out. And until next time, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.